The lights in the meeting room were too bright. Commander Kaelen Vireth sat in his chair and tried not to blink too much. The bright lights hurt his eyes, but he could not show weakness. Not here, not now. Across the table sat Ambassador Vireth. Colthanus? The alien was tall, maybe 8 feet, with skin that looked like blue crystal. Light moved through her body in slow waves. She had no hair, just smooth crystal skin that went from her head down to her long fingers. Her eyes were white, like snow, and they never seemed to blink. Kaelen looked human compared to her. He was average height with brown hair that was getting gray at the sides. His face had scars from old battles. One scar went from his left ear down to his jaw, another crossed his forehead. His hands were rough from years of holding weapons and tools. The room was big, with a round table in the center. Windows showed the stars outside. They were on Nexus Station, a huge space station that floated between 3 star systems. Diplomats from many worlds came here to make deals and sign papers. Today, Kaelen and Vireth were supposed to decide who got to mine rare metals from the Kepler system. "The humans want too much," Vireth said. Her voice sounded like wind chimes. In a soft breeze. "Your people already control 2 mining operations in that system. Why do you need a third?" Kaelen leaned back in his chair. He had practiced this argument many times. "Because my people work harder than anyone else? We get more metal out of the ground in 1 month than your people get in 6 months. "Hard work is not everything," Vireth replied. "The Zephyrian Collective has better technology. We do not damage the planets like humans do." "Damage?" Kaelen laughed, but it was not a happy laugh. "Lady, your people strip mine entire moons until nothing is left but space dust. Do not talk to me about damage." This was their 3rd meeting. In 2 months, each time they argued about the same things. Other diplomats watched them and whispered that humans and Zephyrians would never agree on anything. Some said there might be a war over the mining rights, but those other diplomats did not know the truth. Vireth's white eyes looked at Kaelen for a long moment. Then she made a small movement with her left hand. 3 fingers, then 2, then 1. It was a signal they had practiced many times. Kaelen saw the signal and felt his heart beat faster. It was time. He stood up from his chair and walked to the big windows. Outside, ships moved between the station's docking bays like metal fish in a dark ocean. "You know what your problem is, Ambassador? You think this is just about mining rights." "What else would it be about?" Vireth asked. "Control," Kaelen said. He put his hand on the cool window glass. "Someone wants to control who gets what in this part of the galaxy. And I do not think it is you or me." Vireth stood up too. Her crystal skin caught the light and threw small rainbows on the walls. "What are you saying, Commander?" Before Kaelen could answer, the lights went out. Emergency red lights came on a few seconds later, making everything look like it was covered in blood. An alarm started beeping somewhere in the walls. Then a voice spoke from speakers in the ceiling. "Attention all station personnel. This is Security Chief Mordek. We have a situation. All diplomatic meetings are suspended. Return to your quarters immediately." Kaelen and Vireth looked at each other. "This was not part of their plan. That is not Mordek," Vireth whispered. "I know his voice. That is someone else." Kaelen walked to the room's door and tried to open it. It would not move. He pressed the button again. Nothing happened. "We are locked in." The voice spoke again from the speakers. "This is the Shadow Syndicate. We now control Nexus Station. Do not try to leave your current location. Do not try to contact anyone outside the station. If you follow these rules, you will not be hurt." Vireth made a sound like breaking glass. In her language, it meant something very bad was happening. "Kaelen, the Shadow Syndicate has been planning this for months, maybe years." "I know," Kaelen said. He was looking at the door controls, trying to understand why they were not working. "The question is, how much do they know about us?" For months, Kaelen and Vireth had been pretending to be enemies. They argued in public meetings. They said bad things about each other to reporters. They made everyone think that humans and Zephyrians hated each other, but it was all lies. The real truth was that both their governments knew something bad was happening in this part of the galaxy. Ships were disappearing. Mining operations were being attacked. Whole colonies were going silent and never answering messages again. All the attacks had one thing in common. Before they happened, the Shadow Syndicate had been seen in the area. The Shadow Syndicate was not like other criminal groups. They did not just steal things or smuggle illegal goods. They wanted to control entire star systems. They wanted to replace the Galactic Council with their own people. Kaelen Vireth had been sent to find proof of what the Syndicate was doing. Their fake arguments were cover so they could work together without anyone noticing, but now the Syndicate had taken over the station, and Kaelen and Vireth were trapped. The air recycling system just changed, Vireth said. She could sense things that humans could not. They are pumping something into the air, not poison. Something to make people sleepy and weak. Kaelen pulled off his jacket and tore a piece of cloth from his shirt. He gave half to Vireth. Cover your nose and mouth. It will help a little. The station shook suddenly like something big had hit it. Then it shook again. What was that? Vireth asked. Kaelen closed his eyes and listened. In the distance, he could hear the sound of energy weapons firing. They are fighting the station security, but something else too. Those were explosions. Not just weapons? Bombs? Maybe, or they could be setting charges to blow up parts of the station. Kaelen looked around the room. How many people are on this station right now? The diplomatic conference has representatives from 47. Different worlds, Vireth said. Plus their guards and helpers, plus the station crew. Maybe 8,000 people total. 8,000 hostages, Kaelen said quietly. The speakers made a crackling sound, then the voice came back. This message is for all diplomatic personnel. You will remain in your current locations until further notice. Any attempt to leave or to contact outside help will result in serious consequences. We have placed explosive charges at critical points throughout the station. If anyone tries to be a hero, everyone dies. Kaelen sat down in his chair again. His mind was working fast, thinking about what they could do. Vireth, can you connect to the station's computer systems? Not from here. I need to be near one of the main computer cores. And even then, they have probably changed all the access codes. What about the maintenance systems? The ones that control air and water and power? Vireth was quiet for a moment. Her crystal skin was glowing brighter, which meant she was thinking hard. Maybe those systems are usually separate from the main computers, but I would still need to get close to them. Kaelen stood up and started looking around the room more carefully. The meeting room was big, but it was just a box with one door. The windows were too thick to break, and even if they could break them, there was nothing but space outside. But wait. In the corner of the room, near the floor, there was a small metal cover. Kaelen knelt down and looked at it closely. It had symbols on it that meant it was part of the air system. Vireth, look at this. She came over and knelt beside him. Her long crystal fingers touched the metal cover. It is an air recycling access port for maintenance workers. Is it big enough for us to fit through? For you, maybe. For me, ... She looked at her tall, wide body. It would be very tight. Kaelen used his fingernails to pry open the cover. Behind it was a dark space just big enough for a person to crawl through. Air was flowing out of it, carrying the smell of metal and machines. The station crew probably knows these tunnels very well, Kaelen said. If any of them are still free, they might be hiding in the maintenance areas. And if they are not free, then we make our own plan. Kaelen looked at Vireth. In my experience, when someone takes hostages, they expect the hostages to sit quietly and wait to be rescued. They do not expect the hostages to start fighting back. Vireth's white eyes seemed to glow in the red emergency light. Commander, my people are peaceful. We do not fight wars like humans do. I know, Kaelen said, but maybe it is time you learned. The station shook again, harder this time. In the distance, they could hear the sound of metal tearing and people screaming. Their fake rivalry was over. Now they had to become real partners if they wanted to survive, and if they wanted to save 8,000 lives. Kaelen crawled through the dark air tunnel on his hands and knees. The metal was cold against his skin, and every few feet he had to stop and listen. Behind him, Vireth moved much slower. Her crystal body was wider than his, and she had to squeeze. Through the tight spaces, "How much further?" she whispered. "I do not know," Kaelen said. "But we need to find a way out of the diplomatic section. The Syndicate will have guards watching all the main corridors. They have been crawling for 20 minutes. The tunnel was dark except for small lights every few yards. Kaelen could hear the station's air recycling fans humming around them. Sometimes they heard voices through the walls, but they could not tell if the voices belonged to friends or enemies. The tunnel split into two paths ahead. Kaelen stopped and looked both ways. One path went up toward the station's center. The other went down toward the lower levels where the maintenance crews worked. "Which way?" Vireth asked. Before Kaelen could answer, they heard footsteps in the tunnel behind them, heavy boots on metal. "At least 3 people, maybe more. They found our way in," Kaelen whispered. "We need to move, now." He chose the path going down and started crawling faster. Vireth followed him, her crystal skin scraping against the tunnel walls. The sound was too loud, but they had no choice. Behind them, the footsteps were getting closer. Someone was shouting orders, but the words were muffled by the tunnel walls. Kaelen saw light ahead. Not the small tunnel lights, but bright white light coming through a metal grate. He crawled to it and looked through the gaps in the metal dot. Below them was a large room full of machines. Pipes ran along the walls and ceiling. The air was warm and humid. This was one of the station's main life support centers, but they were not alone. 6 people stood around the machines. They wore black uniforms with red symbols on their shoulders. Syndicate soldiers. Each one carried an energy rifle and had armor, covering their chest and back. One of the soldiers was different from the others. He was tall and thin, with pale skin and silver metal parts attached to his head and arms. Cables ran from the metal parts into a portable computer he carried. "The station's defensive systems are offline," the cyborg said. His voice sounded like a machine trying to sound human. "All security doors are locked. All communication systems are blocked." "What about the diplomatic section?" asked one of the other soldiers. "Secure. All representatives are contained in their meeting rooms. No one has tried to escape." Kaelen felt Vireth touch his shoulder. She pointed back the way they had come. The footsteps in the tunnel were very close now. They were trapped. Syndicate soldiers above them and behind them. Kaelen looked at the metal grate more carefully. It was held in place by 4 screws, one at each corner. The screws were old and some of them looked loose. If he could remove them quietly, they might be able to get into the room below. But then what? 6 armed soldiers against 1 human and 1 peaceful alien who had never fought in her life. The footsteps behind them stopped. Someone was whispering, but Kaelen could not hear the words. He made a decision, very carefully. He started turning one of the screws with his fingernail. It was slow work, and the metal made small scraping sounds. But the machines in the room below were loud enough to cover the noise. Vireth watched him work. Her white eyes were wide with fear, but she did not make any sound. The first screw came loose, then the second. Kaelen could feel sweat on his forehead even though the tunnel was cool. The third screw was harder. It had been painted over many times, and the paint made it stick. Kaelen had to use both hands to turn it. "There," one of the soldiers below said. "Did you hear that?" All 6 soldiers stopped talking and listened. Kaelen froze. His hands were still on the screw, but he did not move. "Hear what?" the cyborg asked. "Scratching, like something in the walls." "This station is old," another soldier said. "The walls make noise all the time." "Check it anyway," the cyborg said. "You and Martinez search the maintenance areas on this level. The rest of you continue monitoring the life support systems." 2 soldiers left the room. That was better, but 4 armed soldiers were still too many. Kaelen went back to work on the screw. His fingernail was starting to bleed, but he kept turning. Finally, it came loose. The 4th screw was the easiest. It fell out completely and dropped toward the floor below. Kael caught it just before it hit the ground. The metal grate was now loose. held in place only by its own weight. Kaelen could lift it up and they could drop down into the room, but the soldiers were still there. He looked at Vireth and pointed to the machines around the room. Then he pointed to her crystal hands. She understood. Her people could interface with computer systems by touching them directly. If she could reach the right machine, she might be able to cause some kind of distraction. Vireth nodded, but she looked scared. Kaelen lifted the grate very slowly. The room below was about 10 feet down. If they dropped, they would land behind. A large air recycling unit? The soldiers might not see them right away. He pointed down and mouthed the word, "Jump." Vireth shook her head. She was too scared. Behind them in the tunnel, the footsteps started again. Whoever was following them was getting very close. Kaelen had no more time for being gentle. He grabbed Vireth's arm and whispered in her ear, "Trust me." Then he pushed the grate aside and dropped through the opening. He landed hard on the metal floor, but he rolled to absorb the impact like he had been trained to do in the military. The sound was loud, but the machines covered most of it. Above him, Vireth was still in the tunnel. She was looking down at him with terrified white eyes. "Movement in Sector 7, one of the soldiers said. "Check it out." Footsteps were coming toward Kaelen's hiding place. He looked up at Vireth and gestured frantically for her to jump. She closed her eyes and let herself fall. Vireth was not trained to land like a soldier. She hit the floor hard and her crystal body made a sound like a bell ringing. The sound echoed through the entire room. What was that? The cyborg shouted. All 4 soldiers started moving toward their hiding place. Kaelen helped Vireth stand up. She was hurt but not badly. "Can you reach that control panel?" he whispered, pointing to a computer terminal on the wall. "I think so." "When I say go, run to it and do whatever you can to mess up their systems. Make the lights go out, change the air temperature, anything." "What are you going to do?" Kaelen picked up a piece of broken metal pipe from the floor. It was about 3 feet long and heavy. What humans do best. "Cause trouble." The soldiers were almost at their hiding place. Kaelen could see the barrel of an energy rifle coming around the corner of the air recycling unit. "Go," he whispered. Vireth ran toward the control panel. Her crystal feet made ringing sounds on the metal floor, but she was fast. The first soldier came around the corner and saw Kaelen. The man started to raise his rifle. Kaelen swung the metal pipe like a baseball bat. It hit the soldier in the chest and knocked him backward into his partner. Both men fell down in a tangle of arms and legs. "Intruders and life support!" The cyborg shouted, "Seal all exits!" The third soldier had a clear shot at Kaelen. He aimed his rifle and prepared to fire, but Vireth had reached the control panel. She pressed her crystal hands against it and her whole body started glowing bright blue. All the lights in the room went out. In the darkness, Kaelen heard energy weapons firing. Bright flashes lit up the room for split seconds, but no one could see well enough to aim. "Emergency lighting?" The cyborg yelled. "Where is the emergency lighting?" Kaelen stayed low and moved toward the sounds of confusion. He could not see the soldiers, but he could hear them stumbling around and bumping into machines. Something grabbed his ankle. One of the soldiers he had knocked down was trying to get back up. Kaelen swung the pipe down hard. The man stopped moving. Red emergency lights came on, but they were dim and flickering. Vireth was still connected to the control panel, and her body was glowing brighter than before. "She's interfacing with our systems," the cyborg said. "Stop her." 2 soldiers started shooting at Vireth. Energy bolts hit the wall around her, leaving black burn marks. Kaelen threw his metal pipe at the nearest soldier. It hit the man in the head and he fell down. But the cyborg was aiming his own weapon at Vireth now. "Human, surrender now or the crystal dies." The cyborg said. Kaelen was too far away to reach him before he could fire, but Vireth was not helpless anymore. Her connection to the station systems had given her access to things the soldiers did not expect. The air recycling fans suddenly sped up to maximum power. The sound was deafening. Then all the pipes in the room started releasing steam at once. The room filled with hot, thick fog. No one could see anything. Kaelen heard the cyborg fire his weapon, but the energy bolt went wide and hit a wall. In the chaos, Kaelen found Vireth by following the blue glow of her crystal skin. We need to go. Now. She pulled her hands away from the control panel. The glow faded from her body, but the steam was still pouring out of the pipes. I damaged their control over the life support systems, she said, but I could not break it completely. The cyborg has backup controls in his portable computer. Did you learn anything useful? Yes, the Syndicate has control of the main docking bays, the communication center, and the command deck. But there are still free station personnel hiding in the lower maintenance levels. The maintenance corridor was darker than the tunnels. Kaelen and Vireth moved carefully, listening for any sound that might mean danger. Water dripped from pipes overhead, and somewhere in the distance, machines hummed with steady rhythm. How? Do you know where to go? Vireth whispered. I do not, Kaelen said. But maintenance areas are usually built the same way on most stations. The important stuff is always at the bottom, where it is harder for enemies to reach. They had been walking for 10 minutes when they heard voices ahead. Not the harsh commands of Syndicate soldiers, but quiet, scared whispers. Kaelen held up his hand to stop Vireth. He crept forward and looked around a corner. 6 people were sitting in a small room filled with spare parts and tools. 4 of them wore the blue uniforms of station maintenance workers. 1 wore the gray uniform of station security. The last person was small and wore the simple clothes of a food service worker. All of them looked frightened and tired. Kaelen stepped into the light, where they could see him. Do not be afraid. We are here to help. The security officer jumped up and pointed a small energy pistol at him. Stop right there. Identify yourself. Commander Kaelen Reeves, Earth Defense Force. This is Ambassador Vireth Kolfanis of the Zephyrian Collective. We escaped from the diplomatic section. Prove it, the security officer said. But her hand was shaking as she held the weapon. Vireth came around the corner. Her crystal skin caught the light and threw small rainbows on the walls. The station workers stared at her with wide eyes. She is telling the truth, one of the maintenance workers said. I saw them both at the diplomatic meetings on the news feeds. The security officer lowered her weapon. Officer Sarah Chun, station security, these are my people. We have been hiding here since the Syndicate took over. How many Syndicate soldiers are on the station? Kaelen asked. At least 50, Chun said. Maybe more. They came in 3 ships disguised as cargo vessels. Once they docked, they took over the security center and locked down all the main systems. What about the station commander? Dead, Chun said quietly. They killed him when he refused to surrender. They killed anyone who tried to fight back. 1 of the maintenance workers, an older man with grease stains on his uniform, spoke up. But they do not know the station like we do. There are ways to move around that they have not found yet. Can you get us to the main computer core? Vireth asked. Maybe, but it is heavily guarded. The Syndicate has at least 10 soldiers watching. Kaelen sat down on a box of spare parts and looked at each person in the group. Tell me what you know about their positions. Where are they strongest? Where are they weakest? For the next hour, the station crew told them everything they had seen and heard. The Syndicate controlled the docking bays, the command center, the communication array, and the main computer core. They had guards at all the major intersections and checkpoints throughout the station, but they were making mistakes. They think like military people, Chun said. They watch the main corridors and the important rooms, but they ignore the small spaces. The maintenance shafts, the cargo holds, the waste processing areas, and they do not understand how the station really works, the older maintenance worker added. They can control the main computers, but they do not know about the backup systems and the manual overrides. Kaelen was quiet for a long time, thinking. Then he looked at Vireth. How much damage did you do to their life support controls? Not much. I confused their systems for a few minutes, but they probably fixed it by now. The cyborg had backup equipment. But you could do more if you had better access? Yes, if I could reach the main computer core, I could do much more than just confuse them. Kaelen stood up and started pacing around the small room. What if we do not try to fight them directly? What if we make them fight us on our terms instead? What do you mean? Chun asked. You said they think like military people. Military people like to control everything from one central location. They like to know where everyone is and what everyone is doing. But what happens when you take away their control? The older maintenance worker smiled for the first time since they had met him. Chaos. Exactly. Kaelen looked at each person in the group. How many other station crew members are still hiding in different parts of the station? Maybe 20 or 30, Chun said. Small groups scattered around the lower levels. And how many maintenance shafts and service tunnels connect all the important areas of the station? Hundreds. The station is like a big machine. Everything is connected to everything else. Kaelen sat down again and started drawing on a piece of paper with a pencil from the toolbox. Here is what we are going to do. We are not going to attack their strongholds. We are going to attack their confidence. He drew a simple map of the station, marking the locations where the syndicate had guards. Vireth, you said you can interface with the station systems. Can you do it from multiple locations, or do you need to be at the main computer core? I can interface with any computer terminal or control panel on the station. But the main core would give me much more power. Good. Chun, can your people move through the maintenance areas without being detected? If we are careful, yes, then here is the plan. Kaelen pointed to different areas on his rough map. We split into small teams. Each team goes to a different part of the station. We do not try to fight the guards directly. Instead, we mess with their equipment, their communications, their lights, their life support. Hit and run tactics, Chun said, understanding. Right. We make them think there are enemies everywhere. We make them spread their forces thin trying to guard everything at once. And while they are running around chasing shadows, Vireth and I go for the main computer core. That is still heavily guarded, the food service worker said. She had been quiet until now. Yes, Kaelen said. But if our distractions work, some of those guards will be pulled away to deal with other problems. Vireth was studying the map. There is something else we can do. Each time I interface with a computer terminal, I can plant a small virus in the system. Not enough to damage anything important, but enough to cause random malfunctions. Like what? Doors that open and close by themselves, lights that flicker. Air recycling systems that make strange noises. Small things that will make the soldiers nervous and distracted. The older maintenance worker was nodding. And we know where all the manual overrides are. We can disable elevators, change the temperature in different sections, even shut off power to specific areas. How long will it take to coordinate with the other hidden crew members? Kaelen asked. A few hours, Chun said. We have a way to communicate using the station's internal maintenance signals. Short clicks and beeps that sound like normal system functions. Do it, Kaelen said, but be careful. The syndicate might be monitoring those signals too. As Chun and the maintenance workers started making plans, Vireth pulled Kaelen aside. This is very risky, she said quietly. If we are caught, they will kill us. And if we fail, they might start killing hostages to punish us. I know, Kaelen said. But what choice do we have? If we sit here and do nothing, people die anyway. At least this way, we have a chance to save them. Why do humans always choose the most dangerous path? Kaelen thought about that for a moment. Because sometimes the most dangerous path is the only one that leads where you need to go. Over the next 3 hours, they prepared. Chun used the maintenance communication system to contact other hidden crew members throughout the station. The plan was simple but required precise timing. At exactly 1400-hour station time, teams would begin creating distractions in 12 different locations. Each team would cause problems for exactly 10 minutes, then move to a new location and repeat. Meanwhile, Kaelen and Vireth would make their way to the main computer core through the least guarded route the maintenance crews had found. Remember, Kaelen told everyone as they prepared to leave, we are not trying to be heroes, we are trying to be smart. Stay alive, stay hidden, and make the syndicate think they are fighting ghosts. The first team left through a waste disposal shaft. The second team crawled into an air recycling tunnel. One by one, they all disappeared into the hidden spaces of the station, Soon, only Kaelen and Vireth were left in the maintenance room. Are you ready? Kaelen asked Vireth's crystal. Skin was glowing softly. In her people's culture, that meant she was afraid but determined. I have never done anything like this before. Neither have I, Kaelen admitted, but humans have a saying. The best time to be brave is when you are scared. That does not make sense. Most human sayings do not make sense, but they help us do impossible things anyway. They left the maintenance room and started walking toward the center of the station. Around them, Nexus Station hummed with the sounds of machines and recycling systems, but soon, if their plan worked, it would hum with something else. Chaos. And in that chaos, maybe they could find a way to save 8,000 lives. At exactly 1400 hours, the chaos began. Kaelen and Vireth were crawling through an access tunnel 2 levels below the main computer core when they heard the first alarm. Then another alarm started in a different part of the station, then a third. It is working, Vireth whispered. Through the tunnel walls, they could hear running footsteps and shouting voices. The Syndicate soldiers were responding to the distractions just as Kaelen had hoped. Team 3, report to Cargo Bay 7 immediately, a voice said over the station's communication system. We have intruders in the storage area. Team 6. Power failure in Residential Section 4. Check all maintenance access points. All units, be advised we have multiple system malfunctions throughout the station. Kaelen smiled grimly. The station crew was doing their job perfectly. Every few minutes, another team would create a new problem somewhere else on the station. Lights going out, doors opening and closing randomly, strange noises in the air vents. The Syndicate was starting to panic. Commander, Vireth said, I can feel the computer systems from here. Someone is trying to trace the source of the malfunctions. They are getting frustrated. Good, frustrated people make mistakes. They reached the end of the tunnel and climbed down into a maintenance room directly below the computer core. Above them, heavy footsteps moved back and forth across the metal floor. How many guards are left up there? Kaelen asked quietly. Vireth pressed her hand against the wall and closed her white eyes. Her crystal skin began to glow as she connected with the station's sensor networks. 6 soldiers around the computer core itself. The 3 of them just received orders to investigate problems in other sections. They are arguing about whether to leave their posts. Let me help them decide. Kaelen said he found the manual controls for the air circulation system in this section of the station. Very carefully, he adjusted the temperature settings. Within minutes, the computer core area would become uncomfortably hot. Team 2, we need you in the botanical gardens, came another voice over the communications. Someone is interfering with the atmospheric controls. Above them, one of the soldiers said, Why is it getting so hot in here? Probably another malfunction, his partner replied. This whole station is falling apart. Should we call for a technician? All the technicians are locked up with the other hostages. We will have to deal with it ourselves. Footsteps moved away from the computer core. More arguing voices faded into the distance. Now only 3 guards remain, Vireth said. That is still too many for a direct attack, Kaelen said. We need a better distraction. He looked around the maintenance room. It was full of spare parts, tools, and diagnostic equipment. In one corner sat a large box labeled Emergency Repair Supplies. Kaelen opened the box and found exactly what he was looking for. Emergency flares, the kind used to signal for help. When ships were in trouble, each flare burned very bright and made a lot of smoke. Vireth, can you access the fire suppression system for the computer core? Yes, but if I trigger it, foam will spray everywhere. It might damage the computers. Not the foam system. The smoke detection system. I want you to make it think there. Is a fire up there? Vireth understood immediately. She pressed both hands against a wall panel and her whole body began glowing bright blue. Done. The smoke detectors are now very sensitive. Any small amount of smoke will trigger the full alarm. Kaelen took 3 emergency flares from the box and climbed back into the access tunnel. He crawled to a ventilation shaft that led directly to the computer core area. Very carefully, he activated 1 flare and dropped it into the shaft. Bright. Red light filled the tunnel, followed by thick white smoke. Within seconds, alarms started screaming above them. "Fire in the main computer core," a mechanical voice announced. "All personnel evacuate immediately. Fire suppression systems activating." "In 30 seconds? What fire?" one of the guards shouted. "I do not see any flames." "There is smoke coming from the air vents." "Call the fire control team." "We are the fire control team, you idiot." More footsteps ran across the floor above. Emergency lights began flashing. The fire alarm was so loud that Kaelen could barely hear Vireth talking to him. "2 guards have left to get fire extinguishers," she said. "Only one remains at the computer core." "1 guard I can handle," Kaelen said. They climbed out of the maintenance room and found a service ladder that led to the computer core level. Kaelen went first, carrying a heavy wrench from the maintenance tools. The corridor outside the computer core was full of smoke from the flare. Emergency lights flashed red and white, making it hard to see clearly. The fire alarm was still screaming. Through the smoke, Kaelen could see the entrance to the computer core. 1 syndicate soldier stood guard outside the door, coughing and covering his nose with his sleeve. Kaelen waited until the guard turned away, then crept up behind him. He hit the man on the head with the wrench. The guard fell down and did not move. "Clear?" Kaelen called to Vireth. She climbed out of the service ladder and ran to the computer core entrance. Her crystal hands touched the door controls and it slid open immediately. The computer core was a large room filled with tall machines that hummed and blinked with thousands of tiny lights. Cables ran between the machines like metal rivers. In the center of the room stood the main control console. "This is it," Vireth said. "From here I can access everything." She ran to the control console and pressed her hands against it. Immediately, her crystal skin began glowing brighter than Kaelen had ever seen it. Light traveled through her body in waves, and her white eyes became as bright as stars. "I am in," she said. Her voice sounded different now, like it was coming from far away. "I can see all the station systems. The Syndicate has control programs running on 17 different networks. Can you shut them down?" "Some of them, but not all. Their main control system is protected by military-grade encryption. It will take time to break through." Outside in the corridor, Kaelen heard footsteps and voices. The other guards were coming. "Back. How much time?" he asked. "At least 10 minutes. Maybe 15. "We do not have that long." The footsteps were getting closer. Through the smoke, Kaelen could see flashlight beams cutting through the red emergency lighting. "Hey, Marcus," one of the guards called. "Marcus, where are you?" They had found their unconscious partner, intruders in the computer core. Another voice shouted, "Send backup immediately." Kaelen looked around the computer room for anything he could use as a weapon. There were tools and spare parts, but nothing that would stop armed soldiers. "Vireth, I need options. Can you do anything to help us fight them?" "I am trying to break their encryption." "I cannot do 2 things at once." The guards were right outside the door now. Kaelen could hear them talking and moving into position. "Surrender now." One of them called, "Come out with your hands up or we will come in shooting." Kaelen did not answer. Instead, he started stacking computer equipment in front of the door to make a barricade. It would not stop energy weapons, but it might slow the soldiers down. 30 seconds, the guard called. "Then we come in." Vireth was still connected to the control console, her body glowing like a blue star. "I found something," she said. "The Syndicate's main control system is not just on this station. It is connected to their ships in the docking bay." "What does that mean?" "It means their whole operation depends on maintaining a link between the station and their ships. If I can break that link, Do it. But breaking the link means cutting all communication between the station and the outside galaxy. No one will be able to call for help." The guards had stopped talking. Kaelen could hear them preparing to attack. "We are already cut off from help," he said. "Do whatever you can." Energy weapon fire suddenly filled the air. Bright bolts hit the door and the walls around it. The soldiers were shooting their way in. Vireth's glow became even brighter. "I found their main command codes. But Commander, if I do this, there will be consequences." The syndicate will know that someone has broken their control systems. They might start killing hostages. Another volley of energy bolts hit the door. The metal was starting to melt. Or they might realize they are losing control and try to escape, Kaelen said. Either way, we have to try. I need 30 more seconds. The door exploded inward. Syndicate. Soldiers poured into the room, firing their weapons and shouting orders. Kaelen grabbed a piece of metal debris and threw it at the first soldier through the door. It hit the man in the face and he stumbled backward into his partners, but more soldiers kept coming. 20 seconds, Vireth said. An energy bolt hit the computer console next to her. Sparks flew everywhere, but she did not let go. Kaelen tackled one of the soldiers and they fell to the floor together. They fought hand to hand while energy weapons fired all around them. 10 seconds. Another soldier aimed his weapon directly at Vireth. Step away from the console. Kaelen tried to reach him, but two other soldiers blocked his path. 5 seconds. The soldier's finger tightened on the trigger. Got it. Vireth shouted. Every light in the computer core went out. Emergency power kicked in a moment later, but something had changed. The machines sounded different. The humming was quieter, and many of the blinking lights had gone dark. What did you do? The soldier demanded. Vireth pulled her hands away from the console and turned to face him. Her crystal skin was still glowing. The moment the lights came back on, everything changed. The syndicate soldiers in the computer core looked around in confusion. Their communication devices were making strange beeping sounds. Their weapons targeting systems were flickering on and off. Command, do you read? One soldier said into his radio. Command, respond. Only static came back. Kaelen saw the fear in their eyes. These soldiers were used to having support, backup plans, and escape routes. Now they were cut off from everything they depended on. Your ships cannot hear you anymore, Vireth said. She was still glowing softly, but she looked tired. And you cannot call for reinforcements. Shut up! The soldier leader shouted. He pointed his weapon at her. Fix what you did, or I will kill you right now. Kill me, and you will never get off this station alive. Vireth replied calmly. All around the station, other things were happening. In the docking bays, syndicate ships were trying to contact their people on the station, but getting no response. In the corridors, soldiers were discovering that their secure communication network had been destroyed, and in the maintenance tunnels, station crew members were getting a message they had been waiting hours to hear. All station personnel, came a voice over the general communication system. It was Officer Chun. The computer core has been retaken. Repeat, we have control of the main systems. All crew members begin Phase 2 operations immediately. Phase 2 was simple. With the station systems back under friendly control, the hidden crew members could do much more than just create distractions. They could actually fight back. In the computer core, the syndicate soldiers were getting more nervous by the minute. Sir, one of them said to their leader, we are receiving reports from all over the station. Our people are losing contact with each other. Some teams are not responding at all. How is that possible? The leader demanded. Kaelen stood up slowly, his hands empty but ready to fight. Because you made the same mistake that all bullies make. You thought fear would be enough to keep people quiet. We have hostages, the soldier leader said. 8,000 of them. One word from me and my people start killing civilians. What? Word? Kaelen asked. You cannot contact your people, remember? The soldier leader reached for a backup communication device on his belt. But when he activated it, all that came out was more static. Vireth had been thorough. Every syndicate communication channel was dead. Besides, Kaelen continued, your people have bigger problems now. He pointed to a security monitor on the wall. The screen showed one of the station's main corridors, where a group of syndicate soldiers was surrounded by station security officers and armed crew members. Surrender now and you will be treated according to galactic law, Kaelen said. Keep fighting, and you will have to deal with 8,000 very angry people who want to go home. The soldier leader looked at his men. There were only 4 of them left in the computer core. They were outnumbered, cut off from support, and facing an enemy that knew the station better than they did. but he was not ready to give up. "We still have the explosive charges," he said. "If I do not check in with my demolition team every hour, they will blow up the station anyway." "What demolition team?" Vireth asked. She touched the computer console again, and her crystal skin began to glow. Images appeared on the security monitors around the room. The screens showed different parts of the station where the Syndicate had placed their bomb teams. But in every location, the demolition experts were either unconscious, captured, or fleeing through maintenance tunnels with station crew members chasing them. "Your bomb teams have been neutralized," Vireth said. "Station personnel found them, using the internal sensor network." The soldier leader stared at the monitors in disbelief. His entire operation was falling apart. "This is impossible," he whispered. "We planned for everything. We had backup plans and contingency protocols." "You planned for everything except the one thing you should have feared most," Kaelen said. "What is that?" "People who refuse to give up?" On the security monitors, they could see the final moments of the Syndicate's occupation. Soldiers were surrendering in groups throughout the station. The few who tried to keep fighting were quickly overwhelmed by station crew members who knew every hiding place and secret passage in the docking bays. The Syndicate ships were trying to leave, but station defense systems had locked onto them, without communication with their people inside the station. The ship commanders did not know whether to fight or flee. Most chose to flee. The soldier leader in the computer core made one last desperate attempt. He grabbed Vireth around the neck and pressed his weapon against her head. "I want safe passage to the docking bay," he said. "Give me a ship and let me leave, or the crystal dies." Kaelen did not move. He just looked at the soldier with steady eyes. "You know what the difference is between you and me?" Kaelen asked. "What?" "You think this is about winning and losing, but I think this is about doing what is right." "What does that mean?" "It means I trust my partner," Vireth smiled. Her crystal skin suddenly flared with bright light, so bright that everyone in the room had to close their eyes. When the light faded, the soldier leader was unconscious on the floor. His weapon lay beside him, completely drained of power. "Energy weapons do not work well when they are hit by electrical feedback," Vireth explained. "I learned that from the station's security systems." The other soldiers looked at their own weapons. Nervously, the targeting displays were all dark. "I would not try to use those," Vireth warned them. "They will not work anymore." One by one, the soldiers dropped their weapons and raised their hands in surrender. Kaelen walked to the main communication console and activated the station-wide broadcast system. "Attention all station personnel and diplomatic guests," he said. "This is Commander Kaelen Vireth. The Syndicate forces have been defeated. All hostiles have been captured or have fled the station. You are safe to return to your normal activities." Cheers could be heard echoing through the corridors outside. The computer core. "All diplomatic representatives," Kaelen continued, "please report to the main conference hall in 1 hour. We have important information to share about the Shadow Syndicate that the entire galaxy needs to hear." Vireth was still connected to the computer systems. "Commander, I am detecting several Galactic Council ships approaching the station. They must have received our distress signals once I restored communications." "Good, we are going to need witnesses for what comes next." "What comes next?" Kaelen looked at the security monitors, which now showed scenes of celebration throughout the station. People were hugging each other, crying with relief, and helping to clean up the damage from the battle. "Justice," he said simply, over the next few hours, the full scope of the Shadow Syndicate's conspiracy was revealed. Vireth's access to their computer systems had given her copies of all their plans, financial records, and communications. The evidence showed that the Syndicate had been planning to take control of dozens of star systems. Not just 3, they had infiltrated governments, bribed officials, and eliminated anyone who stood in their way, but most shocking of all was the identity of their secret leader. "The broker is not just a crime boss," Vireth announced to the assembled diplomats. "He is Counselor Vex Mordain of the Galactic Council itself. He has been using his position to help the Syndicate target specific systems for takeover." The revelation sent shockwaves through the diplomatic community. A sitting council member had been working with criminals to overthrow legitimate governments. How do we know this evidence is real? Asked one of the diplomats. Kaelen activated a holographic display that showed financial transactions, meeting records, and communication logs. Because Ambassador Vireth downloaded it directly from the syndicate's own computers. They kept detailed records of everything. This changes everything, another diplomat said. If we cannot trust our own council members, how can we trust anyone? You start by trusting the people who earned it, Kaelen replied. The station crew who risked their lives to fight back. The security officers who protected civilians instead of running away. The maintenance workers who chose to help strangers instead of hiding in safety. He looked around the room at representatives from dozens of different worlds and species. Today, people from 47 different worlds work together to stop a conspiracy that threatened everyone. Humans and Zephyrians, Altarians and Centaurans, all fighting side by side. That is what real strength looks like. In the days that followed the Shah,